The town that I just came from is so much smaller. Would you mind helping me find it?
Well, I mean, are you sure you want to hang out with me?
Why wouldn't I?
I mean, I'm not the most popular girl in school. I wouldn't want to ruin your reputation or anything.
Are you just gonna let that plebe cut in line?
Hey, who do you think you are? You know, ordering a drink before me doesn't make you look less trashy than you do right now. Come on.
Best burn ever. So close.
Wow, you two are really like...
I'm not like her.
She's not.
I'm serious. Well, until you let this whole popularity thing get to you. I mean, we can go back to the way things used to be.
Oh wow, everyone's gonna notice you.
Really?
Totally. Totally. And now that we're all 18 and this is our last year of this stupid school, we're gonna tear it up.
This recap and analysis of Popular approaches episode 1 not as a sensational coming-of-age drama, but as a careful emotional study of how young women, particularly queer women, learn to navigate visibility, desire, and belonging within social systems that reward conformity and quietly punish authenticity. Beginning with Sabina's arrival in a new town, where her physical wandering through unfamiliar streets immediately signals an interior state of searching that extends beyond geography into identity, self-definition, and the desire to be recognized without being reshaped. Sabina's tomboy presentation is not framed as rebellion but as comfort, suggesting a young woman who has not yet learned to see herself as lacking. And this is crucial because it establishes her as someone whose confidence is situational rather than performative, rooted in ease rather than validation. The accidental collision with Avi functions as the narrative's emotional inciting incident, not because of dramatic stakes, but because of its softness, its ordinariness, and its lack of hierarchy. Sabina does not encounter Avi through spectacle or judgment, but through mutual apology and curiosity, allowing their connection to form in a space untouched by social performance. Avi's shyness, her love of books, cosplay, and makeup, and her immediate rapport with Sabina all unfold through conversation rather than exposition, emphasizing that intimacy here is built through shared interests and mutual attentiveness. The kind of intimacy that many queer women recognize as foundational to their earliest attractions, long before those attractions are named or claimed. Their discussion of books and creative hobbies carries emotional weight because it establishes a shared inner world, one in which admiration flows naturally and without competition. And Sabina's impressed response to Avi's skills subtly inverts dominant narratives about femininity, allowing Avi's interests to be sources of pride rather than markers of marginality. Sabina's recent move after turning 18 places her at a liminal threshold between adolescence and adulthood, a moment when identity feels both malleable and fragile, and this timing intensifies the stakes of her choices, even as the story resists melodrama. When Sabina asks Avi to show her the library, the request becomes symbolically charged, representing not just navigation but trust, alignment, and a willingness to be seen alongside someone who is not socially dominant. And Avi's hesitation reveals an acute awareness of how association functions as currency within teenage hierarchies, particularly for girls, whose worth is often measured relationally rather than individually. Avi's concern about Sabina's reputation reflects an internalized understanding of social risk, one that queer women often learn early, as they become attuned to the ways proximity can invite scrutiny, and Sabina's dismissal of these concerns reads as both sincere and naive, highlighting the difference between someone who has not yet been disciplined by social punishment and someone who has already learned to anticipate it. Their shared walk to the library becomes a quiet act of resistance, not because it is loud or confrontational, but because it prioritizes connection over calculation, suggesting a vision of intimacy grounded in presence rather than outcome. The passage of weeks, during which Sabina and Avi grow close, is handled with restraint, allowing viewers to infer the depth of their bond through implication rather than montage, and this narrative choice mirrors the way many queer friendships deepen slowly, accumulating meaning through repetition, routine, and shared space rather than overt declarations. Their time together at the coffee shop marks a transition from private to semi-public intimacy, and it is here that the social world intrudes most forcefully, embodied by Jillian, Aria, and Aidra, whose entrance is less about individual antagonism than about the structural power of popularity as a system that identifies, selects, and reshapes those it deems promising. Jillian's interest in Sabina is framed as perception rather than aggression. She sees potential, but that potential is defined by adaptability, by Sabina's capacity to be molded into something legible and valuable within an existing hierarchy. The offer of a makeover operates symbolically as an invitation to translation, asking Sabina to render herself in a language that the dominant culture understands. And while this offer is presented as generosity, it carries the implicit condition of alignment and loyalty. Sabina's internal conflict between Avi and the popular girls is not portrayed as cruelty but as confusion, reflecting how young women are often forced to choose between relational safety and social capital, a choice that feels especially fraught for queer women whose authentic connections may exist outside sanctioned norms. Avi's disappointment is quiet and contained, emphasizing her emotional literacy and her learned restraint. And this restraint speaks volumes about the ways marginalized girls often downplay their hurt in order to remain acceptable, to avoid being perceived as demanding or disruptive. Sabina's eventual decision to prioritize the popular girls is framed as an attempt at self-expansion rather than betrayal, underscoring how the desire to be seen, admired, and protected can override even deeply felt bonds, particularly when those bonds lack external validation. After the makeover, Sabina's newfound confidence appears genuine but unstable, rooted in external affirmation rather than internal alignment, and the narrative carefully avoids mocking this transformation, instead treating it as an understandable response to a culture that equates visibility with worth. The moment in which Jillian and her followers display intimacy among themselves is significant not for its surface content but for what it reveals about power and performance. Their closeness is confident, unapologetic, and socially insulated, highlighting how certain expressions of connection are permitted when they are backed by status, while others remain precarious. Sabina's reluctance to participate reflects an internal boundary that has not yet been fully articulated, a hesitation that many queer women recognize as the space between curiosity and consent, between longing and self-protection. Her eventual agreement, motivated by the desire to belong, illustrates how consent can be shaped by context and pressure even in the absence of overt coercion, and the scene's careful framing ensures that this moment is read not as triumph or transgression, but as compromise. The episode's closing question, asking what price Sabina will pay for popularity, resonates beyond the immediate plot, inviting viewers to consider how often women are asked to exchange authenticity for acceptance, and how this exchange disproportionately affects queer women, whose desires and attachments are already subject to erasure or distortion. Throughout the episode, emotional intimacy is portrayed as both sustaining and vulnerable, something that flourishes in private but falters under surveillance, reflecting a broader societal discomfort with women's love for one another, whether that love is romantic, aspirational, or simply deep. This discomfort persists because women-centered intimacy challenges patriarchal assumptions about dependency, value, and desire, and because lesbian relationships in particular expose the insufficiency of narratives that position women primarily in relation to men. By refusing to sensationalize Sabina and Avi's bond, or to vilify Jillian's clique outright, the film insists on nuance, acknowledging that harm often arises not from individual malice, but from systems that reward conformity and punish deviation. The episode also speaks to women more broadly, regardless of sexual orientation, through its exploration of emotional labor. As Sabina manages the expectations of multiple social worlds, Avi absorbs disappointment without protest, and Jillian performs leadership through control and charisma. These dynamics mirror real-life patterns in which women are taught to smooth conflict, absorb discomfort, and prioritize group harmony over personal truth, often at significant emotional cost. The narrative's attention to hesitation, pauses, and unspoken feelings honors the interior lives of its characters, suggesting that growth is not linear, and that self-recognition often emerges through missteps rather than clarity. By framing lesbian connection as ethically meaningful and emotionally rich rather than provocative, the episode contributes to a cultural shift toward representing queer women as complex subjects rather than symbols, and it invites viewers to reflect on their own negotiations between safety and desire, belonging and authenticity. Ultimately, Episode 1 of Popular positions itself as a story about becoming visible, not just to others but to oneself, tracing the early moments when choices begin to shape identity, and when the longing to be loved collides with the fear of being known, offering a quiet, resonant portrait of women's relationships that insists on care, respect, and emotional truth in a world still learning how to make space for women loving women.